Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our Introduction to Vlookup and Pivot Tables on a Mac video series. So in the last video we went through and did Vlookup on type sold, and as you can see it has gone in and given us meaningful data based on our numbers over here for type sold. I went through and did Vlookup for the rest of our columns, and now we're ready to finalize our VLOOKUPs and move into a pivot table. So to finalize our VLOOKUPs, what I'm going to do is click on this box in the upper left corner of our screen. And what that is going to do is select all of the information in our Excel worksheet. And I'm going to right click and copy all of this data. And now I'm going to right click on this again. I want to go into Paste Special. And when I paste special, I want to paste the values. So pasting the values is going to remove all of the formulas that we built and just give us the exact information that was pulled from the formulas. So if we click on caret, you can see that in the formula bar, it no longer has the VLOOKUP formula, it's just caret. And so now that we've done this, we can go in and delete the raw data. If this was a production database and you had to keep this information and you didn't want to lose your raw data, you would copy this into a separate sheet. But because we can pull our data set back from Moodle, I'm not going to do that. So we can just go in and delete these columns. And to delete, all I am doing is clicking on my column header, so the D up here, and then I right click using 2 fingers and press delete. And now you can see we have a much tighter data set that is all cleaned up and ready to go into a pivot table. So to go into a pivot table, I'm going to click anywhere in our actual data and press Command A. And what this does is only select the fields in our data set that have been filled out. And I'm going to just go and format this as a table. And I want to make sure that this box saying my table has headers is checked. And I'll click OK. So now we have our data formatted in a table, and we've opened up the Table tab on the ribbon. So I'm going to click on Summarize with a Pivot Table, and just click OK. And now we have the ability to build a pivot table. So to build a pivot table, we can just click and drag all of our different field names into these 4 boxes to allow us to gain insight into our data. So I'm going to drag type sold to my rows and quantity sold to our values. So we can see pretty quickly now that overall we sold 440 drinks in the time period captured in the data set, and 78 of those were apple, 50 were carrot, and so on. We can drag additional items down into our pivot table field list to kind of break out into deeper data. So now we can see the juices that we sold throughout the day on a per juice basis. And if we wanted to change how this was displayed and show the numbers and break down into the juices, we can just go back to our field list and kind of drag and drop, and the pivot table will rebuild each time to allow us to see what we're trying to see. One other thing we can do in pivot tables is if you're unhappy with how these are being displayed, you can just click and drag, so that way we can have the data in a manner that makes a little more sense. So now we have the day in the actual order of the day. One other thing we can do is if we drag time of day up to columns, it gives us one more view again. The one last thing I want to touch on before finishing this video is pivot charts. So you need to update to Excel 16, which is provided by St. Bonaventure, to do this. But on the Pivot Table Analysis tab, we can click on Pivot Chart, and it'll automatically give us a bar chart of the data in our pivot table. And as we change our pivot table, our pivot chart will update to what's actually being displayed. If you're unhappy with the particular chart that has been displayed for you, you can go to the Pivot Chart Design tab and change the chart type to whatever you're trying to display. So for this particular chart, I would actually want to switch my two fields so that way the juices change over the time period. If you have any questions, please feel free to call or text myself or Lori. Thanks, everyone.